Hi, everybody. I am Amy Davies, the CEO of First 30. And today I'm joined by Joel Silverstone. And Joel, you and I met because you did an amazing talk at Disrupt HR in Kitchener-Waterloo, which I absolutely loved. So I really wanted to have you here today, but I wanted you to tell everyone a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, first off, thank you so much for that compliment, Amy. I really appreciate it. And we had such a great chat afterwards. So it's great to be here on the show and talk about some of these ideas. As Amy said, I'm Joel Silverstone. I'm the senior professional skills facilitator, coach, speaker, designer of all the soft skills, professional skills at the Great Canadian Training and Consulting Company. And one of the things that I do there, besides designing and delivering the training and speaking about it, is we saw that there was a gap in the world, in business, especially within the professional skills, within the soft skills. So everyone's learning the technical skills, and there's been so much focus on that there's now been a much more demand for how people can communicate, collaborate, especially now we're in this hybrid world, if you want, where we're virtual and where we're in person or back and forth, and communication and leadership has become so important. And so that's where I try to deliver and design these courses, and that's what we're trying to do at Great Canadian Training.
And on that subject, you have a great topic for us today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your idea or topic that you'd like to share?
Thank you. Well, the idea is this, and this is what I spoke about at Disrupt and have been speaking at other conferences about. A very simple title that seems to really resonate with people in the business world, which is give feedback like a leader, not a critic.
I love it. And
I
I
think
loved it during your talk too. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I think because it resonates, right? Because
Yeah.
when we receive feedback or we're about to give feedback, there's this feeling that it's going to be a difficult conversation. And what I'm trying to share here with the HR world is that feedback is actually, when done well, and when it's done well, we see that 92% of people, when they're given very specific recognition, they'll repeat that action in the future. So when feedback is done well, it has a ripple effect within the culture, within the organization. Because Amy, just from what I know of you, like we're in the same thing. We both believe that people want to be better. People want to grow. People want to know, what can I do differently? How can I do differently? But it's how it's delivered that is the impact. So the criticism is, I think, the example I always give is we were never called into the principal's office because we got an A.
Yeah.
And right, is that anticipation, feedback coming, and we're starting to think back of our time and being called into the principal's office. We're going to be scolded, we're going to be reprimanded, we're going to be shamed. It's bad news. And so as soon as we hear the word feedback, we have that music, the theme music from Jaws playing, feedback, donna, 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 donna.
Yeah.
What are they going to say? What's going to happen? What are they going to point out? And so as soon as we say, Amy, I have some feedback for you, all of a sudden the emotions start to rise. And so what we're talking about here is that safety and how we start that session is so important. One of the keys of safety is to have a really clear intention of what you want to do with this feedback. So an intention such as, if I was giving you feedback, Amy, and maybe, let's say maybe I had asked you to do a PowerPoint slide deck for me, and you didn't quite do it the way I expected it to. And so there was a miscommunication there. So my initial thought, and this is what we see a lot of leaders, the initial thought is, how can I make Amy understand that's not the way to do it? So right off the bat, the intention is going to lead you down the path of criticism. It's going to become personal. Instead, it should be looking at the problem together, which is we both want this PowerPoint presentation to look dynamic, to look within a certain specificity of what we're looking for and expectations. So my intention should be around collaboration. We want to collaborate together. We're going to be working together in the future. So I might start with a safe way to open, which is, Amy, I'd like for us to discuss the PowerPoint presentation and the expectations moving forward. And I want to hear your thoughts on this and feelings, and I'd like to share my perspective as well.
That's great, because when you get together with someone and you're giving them feedback and you talk to them about the outcome that you want, that you collectively want, it's so much easier for both of you to be on that journey together, working towards that positive outcome and getting on the same page about that first. And I'd love to hear more thoughts from you on some great ways, some, ways for people to give feedback that are proven and
Yeah.
work. So is there any other things that you'd like to talk about in terms of how to deliver feedback effectively and some strategies?
Yeah. So number one, it is to have, what do I want this feedback to do? So collaboration, and also could be thinking about where can we find some common ground as well, and focusing on the future, not the past. So even in that opening, we talked about the future and not the past. The next one is what I like to call Q-tip, which is quit taking it personally.
Yeah.
So if you didn't do a good job on the PowerPoint, even though I felt I gave you good notes on what to do, I can't take it personally that, oh, Amy's doing this to get me riled up. Amy's doing this to embarrass me. Amy's doing this on purpose because she has some underlying feelings of hostility towards me. No, it's got nothing to do with me. So that's number one, is to be able to manage my emotions in that situation. Because if we take it personally, I'm like, oh, I got so much to do. I got so much to change. And why is she doing this to me? And it's like, no, it's Q-tip. Quit taking it personally.
What are your thoughts? That's a really good piece of advice. What are your thoughts on timing? Because you and I had a little chat about, I also am a presenter. So getting up in front of an audience and giving a big talk, and then like some very well-meaning person comes up to you and tells you that you did something that either they didn't like, or maybe you interpret as them telling you did wrong, or maybe it's just a way to improve. But it's not that you don't want that feedback. It's that they're giving that feedback to you when you're most vulnerable.
I like the example you gave, which is, you're coming out of a webinar and you're getting feedback right immediately afterwards, and it's complex and layered, and it's like, no, because it's all emotional at that point. You're raw at that point. You need to decompress first. So maybe I'm ready to give you feedback, but you're not ready to receive it. So what is the point in giving you the feedback at that time? But I like what you said, timing is so important, because a lot of people say, oh, I only get the feedback of my performance review. And it was like, sometimes the feedback was, you need to speak up more at meetings. And it was like, okay, well, you're talking about
the year has gone by.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was, you mean last year?
Yeah.
And so it has no relevance. Or they give feedback about something and it was like, you're trying to remember it, but it has no meaning. Right. So the feedback about something maybe that is, there is that window of doing that so that it's fresh and there's a visual memory. So 24 hours after the webinar, then it could be, hey, Amy, let's have a meeting and talk about the webinar and talk about the things that we liked and the things that we want to improve on for the next time. It's like, clear. Okay, great. And it doesn't have to be, because sometimes people say, I don't have time for feedback. So we got the timing, but I don't have time for feedback. But if you have a good structure that I don't have to do everything, I don't have to change everything about you, even if there's a 10% improvement in what you're going to do based on that. So maybe you did 10 things in that webinar that were not, maybe could be better. Maybe picking one or two things.
Yeah.
Pick your battle as to what it's going to be.
So what you're saying, what I'm hearing, Joel, is that maybe I did 20 things wrong in that webinar.
Maybe.
or in the presentation I was giving, and now, but focus, I'm joking, but focus on the few things that maybe are constructive and that people actually have the power to change. So for instance, if you're in a conference and the audio didn't work properly, that's really not something that was the accountability, unless they organized it, of the speaker, right? So why bother going on about that? Because they probably knew it was pretty bad.
Yeah. Focus on something that's going to be helpful to you, where you afterwards, Amy, will go, that is really helpful. Thank you. And you're motivated to want to do that because you can see that it's helpful to you. And part of that also, as you're saying, talking about the audio, is to focus on the problem and not the person.
Right.
So soft on the person, hard on the problem.
Soft that's so good. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
That's really the thing, is that so that you and I are looking at the problem together versus making each other the problem.
Wow.
And, sorry, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say that also tied in with that is, we always think of feedback as being, constructive or formative, but even giving, even if that the webinar, maybe there was, maybe there was 20 things you did wrong, but if there was the couple things you did well, to really be very specific about what it is that you did well, and for your tone of voice to match the intention. Because it might be, hey, Amy, that was really good. You really answered people's questions. You really interacted with them. But what I really want to talk to you about is.
Yes. So don't just change your tone of voice all of a sudden. Now we're going to talk about the negatives. Right.
That's right.
Well, I also really liked what you said, and I wanted to bring it up again about being timely with your feedback, because it's like the timing and being timely are important. And there is like this little gap where it makes the most sense to give that feedback, because telling someone 6 months later that they've been doing all these things wrong is not going to help make them feel good, or is almost too late to really make those situations any better.
Yeah, because now that person feels embarrassed. Like, oh, for 6 months, you've been wondering why I'm not speaking up at meetings. I thought I was being, and the thing is, I thought I was just listening. I didn't know I was supposed to speak, and I was absorbing the information. So for 6 months, you have been judging me as being not interested, or whatever judgments you have made. So I'm embarrassed now.
Yeah, this is amazing. These are such great tips, Joel. I'm just wondering, because if I'm listening to this, maybe I want to get in touch with you. What is the best way for people who are listening today to reach out to you?
2 ways. One, the easiest way, connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Joel Silverstone.
That's what I did after we met at the conference.
Exactly. And or I would love to chat about communication skills and feedback. So you can always email me at joel@greatcanadiantraining.ca. greatcanadiantraining.ca.
That is wonderful. Well, I am so glad to have had you today. I have learned so I've learned so much, and I'm sure the audience will. I heard it once, but hearing it twice makes it even better, because now it's even more memorable. But thank you so much. I'm really grateful to have you here today, and hope to chat with you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amy, for having me on the show.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.